Good. Well then, let's get started.
Thank you.
Okay.
I said, there's something called got it. Click on it.
Welcome to Pushing Boundaries.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm your host, Dr. Thomas Verny. Let me just say a few things about the podcast, okay? This is not a podcast with bells and whistles or an annoying musical score and bombastic claims to be the best, the funniest, or the most outrageous podcast in the universe. This podcast consists of conversations with highly creative people, established or emerging scientists, writers, and scholars working at the cutting edge of their disciplines and whose accomplishments I highly value. I'm interested in pioneering research, breakthrough discoveries, unconventional ideas. I talk with my guests about things they care about, how they got there, where they are now, and where they are headed. I'm sensitive to a plurality of viewpoints. And so today, it is my great pleasure to welcome to this podcast the Venerable Professor Bhikkhu Mihita, PhD, also known as Suwanda H.J. Sugunasiri, prior to his ordination in Havana in April 2018. Have I got that right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
He became a full-fledged Sangha in Toronto in May 2018. Professor Mihita was born to Buddhist parents in Tangala, Sri Lanka in 1936. He is, and I'm really doing his biography just very, very briefly because it's a long one. He's a US Fulbright scholar with a BA from the University of London, a master's degree in linguistics at the University of Pennsylvania. In Canada since 1967, he earned 3 more degrees, M.Ed in moral philosophy, M.A. in Buddhism as a scientific study, and a PhD in national development. Is that right?
Well, it was called humanistic nationism. That was because it's not nationalism. Nationalism has a sense of emotion, but this is just for whole nation objective.
Okay.
And this was intended, this was a model I developed for what we call the post-colonial nation that are emerging.
Okay. So all these degrees from the University of Toronto. And he joined the faculty of Trinity College, University of Toronto, but returned to Sri Lanka in 1971, where he taught English, linguistics, education, and Buddhist psychology at the Vidya University. He is an ordained theravada monk who introduced theravada Buddhism to Cuba, and more of that a little later.
Well, my association with Trinity was actually much later, not early. Okay.
So is it okay to refer to you as Professor Mihita now?
Okay, thank you very much. Yes.
So Professor Mihita is the founder and editor emeritus of Canadian Journal of Buddhist Studies and founder Nalanda College of Buddhist Studies. From 1993 to 1998, he was a Toronto Star columnist, providing a Buddhist perspective on contemporary bioethical issues. He's also a poet, and I think you published 3 collections of poetry.
Yes, 3 collections, yes.
And novelist, a book you published called Untouchable Woman's Odyssey.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Which is called an extraordinary novel.
Okay.
And just as it's interesting, that was written in 2012. And when I wrote my doctorate in 1978 at U of T, it was also called extraordinary. So
you are an extraordinary person, as we shall discover in the next few minutes.
Yeah.
Your book. Well, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. What caught my interest among Professor Mihita's many writings is his book, The Triune Mind, Triune Brain, a map of the mind through the eyes of Buddhian science in Western science. And that was published in 2018. And also a recently published paper, which I think is very interesting, Buddhism in Cuba, an interview with the Venerable Bhikkhu Mihita in the International Journal of Latin American Religions. And that was published last year in 2020.
But that actually was not it wasn't an article written by me.
No, it was
an interview done by a professor in Latin America.
Right, I understand. So your book, let's talk a little bit about your book. Your book is an amazing interdisciplinary study of mind and body, relating Buddhian science to Western science. It draws upon sutta and abhidhamma and neuroscience, anthropology, linguistics, and embryology. So very slowly, because there's a lot to absorb here, can you tell us, first of all, what is the triune brain, and if possible, in a language most of us can understand?
Well, I'll try my best. Well, of course, triune means threefold, yes. Basically. It refers to three dimensions of the brain, actually in terms of evolutionary terms. One that began earliest, and in the middle, and the last. So the first part is called the brain stem, and it was this is actually the one just above the backbone. Think of an umbrella,
Okay.
folded umbrella. You open it,
Yes.
and then you have the stem. That will be the backbone, and then you push it up to open. That's the brain stem. And then as you continue to open, the ribs show, and that is the middle part, the middle part of the brain. And then when you open up the limbic, that is called the limbic system. And then when you open up further, you have the full umbrella. Another model would be a mushroom. There's a stem, the middle, and the top.
Okay.
So now the lower part was called the reptilian brain, led by Professor McLellan in the 1990s. And then the next part was called the paleo-mammalian. And then the top part was called the neo-mammalian. Now, as you know, in the middle part are the ones at the top level are four lobes. One is the occipital for the eye, focus on the eye. Then you have the temporal, which is on the left side for the hearing, and then the frontal lobe for taste, and the parietal lobe for body functions, body. Now, however, for the nasal, it is in the limbic system, not as part of any of the lobes, any of the lobes. It's in the mid, that in other words is lower. It's in the limbic system. The limbic system itself is made up of amygdala, hypothalamus, etc. And they are the ones that are really functional for things like, sleep-wake cycle, when you're taking the food digestion, and then homeostasis, balance. Then, for example, the menstrual cycle for women, sleep. So those are the specific functions that are done, that happen in the context of the limbic system in the middle part. So then, are we clear so far on that?
Yes.
Are we clear? Good. And then, of course, this came to be critiqued by the neuroscientists later, that they were not quite accurate, because the point that McLellan made was that the beginning was with the reptilian. Then the scientists began to show, no, there are earlier forms of life that have these functions. And then, of course, the same thing with the paleo-mammalian, neo-mammalian. So the issue is, now each of them is considered a computer by itself, its own mind. However, they work together, because, like it's a complex system. And the critique was that they predate the date that McLellan is suggesting. Therefore, the critique is not that there are three parts are not accurate, but the timing is accurate.
Okay. Let me interrupt you. So accept the fact that the way Paul MacLean discussed the triune brain
Right.
may not have been totally correct, but its existence is absolutely a fact. Like there is the triune brain, structurally speaking, right?
Right. And in fact, I call it because we're talking about 3 stages, all relating to life, sentient life.
Right.
From the Buddhism scientific point of view, every sentient being have these senses. It could be 5, 6, or it could be less. But always mind is behind any of them. Even the lowest one, even a serpent, which is called reptilian brain, still has a mind. And therefore, I call it the proto-sentient complex.
Okay.
Because it's not simple, it's complex. And then the next one I call the paleo-sentient complex. And the third part I call the neo-sentient complex that covers the lobes.
Okay, so tell me this. So you talk about the triune mind and the triune brain.
Yes.
So we have looked at the triune brain in terms of Paul MacLean and other people before and after him who have discussed the structure of the brain.
Yeah.
Now, the triune mind, is that a Buddhist concept?
Yes, it is. In fact, the term triune mind was created by me in English, of course. Okay. But the 3 concepts, the Buddha uses 3 terms for the word for mind. One is called mano, M-A-N-O. Other one is chitta, C-I-T-T-A. And the third one is vijnana, V-I-N-N, like in Senor, V-I-N-N-A-N-A, vijnana. Now, however, Buddha says, vijnana, the mind, the chitta, together, it means the whole thing, means the brain, the mind. However, each of them has different functions as well. So, for example, when we talk about the whole mind body, it is vijnana which is in charge. In fact, it's called the city mayor.
Oh, okay.
Because in charge of the whole operation, the autonomous, the ANS, autonomic nervous system, and I also add what we call the autonomic spiritual system, ASPS. So that so all that was in charge. The activity of the entire mind body is the vijnana. So it says here, vijnana, conditioned by vijnana is mind body in one of the Buddha's theorems, and mind body conditioned by mind body is vijnana. So therefore the whole body.
Just a second. So did Buddha actually use the word mind?
Yes, absolutely.
He did.
Mind is the forerunner.
Okay, so does the concept of the mind in Buddhism somehow then breaks down into 3 sort of sub-minds?
They're not sub-minds. They are all of equal value, but different functions.
Okay, so when you talk about the mind, is there a word for the mind which is different from, mano, vijnana, and citta?
No, mind is mano, vijnana, and chitta. Mind is a collective term.
Oh, it's all of them together.
Right. Yes, together. Yeah. And in fact, it can be, I can give an example of how it works. Okay. For example, you saw me the first time today. I saw you the first time today.
Yes.
And as we saw each other, let's say in your case, it impacted on your eyes.
Yes.
And then it went through a process of cognition, another a face.
Yes.
Okay. And then identified as the human face. Now, and then all this takes about 8 minutes, 8 mind moments, not minutes, 8 mind moments.
Yeah, I understand that. Yes.
And then at that mind moment, at that point, a decision is made by the mind whether to which category it falls. Does it fall into the category of what we call cupidity or non-cupidity, or hatred or love, or ignorance, or with knowledge? So a decision is made at that point, at mind moment 8. Now, by this time, at the beginning part is done by Mano. So Mano is actually the gatekeeper. It allows your figure to enter the mind. That's the gate, Mano.
The five senses, sort of how
each of the five senses would be the Mano, yes. Yeah. But each of six senses, that includes also thoughts, mind as well.
Okay.
So then at mind moment 8, the Chitta makes a decision and then stores it in itself, within the mind. And then it's sent on what you call a swift run for another 7 mind moments. And then at mind moments 16 and 17, it gets registered in you. And that's called Vijnana. Now, once that comes into you, then at that time, now this is going beyond Abhidhamma, this is an analysis of, but also Abhidhamma, that Vijnana then comes to be an atom. And then I take it further and say, atoms make up cells, and cells make up the rest. So therefore, all of what you are or what I am is, as in my book, called You Are What You Sense. Everything that's in you is whatever impacted upon your senses at whatever time from conception to now, and it's there. Same thing as me. That's why I have a book called You Are What You Sense. But in this process, all three of Mano, Chitta, and Vijnana are involved. However, go ahead.
But do you relate these different minds, so to speak, do you relate them to specific structures in the triune brain?
Well, I try to. Yes, I do. I don't know how successful. The reason is that, as you know, I have absolutely zero background in science. So everything I've read up is on the secondary sources. So it may not be right. But I've actually tried to show that maybe in the reptilian was the earliest, and however, I think in that I sort of associate that with the amygdala in the limbic system, and also the Vijnana. I don't quite remember. Yes, I do relate to each other, and of course, in the full understanding that, of course, mind is the forerunner.
Mind is what?
Mind is the forerunner.
Forerunner, yes. Of what?
That's the word of the Buddha in a collection called Dhammapada. And then when the mind, it enters the mind, then it gets moved into whatever section that is relevant. If it's I, then in that section it goes to the occipital lobe, for example. If it's the taste, then it's the frontal lobe over time. So that is where the brain comes in. Not that the brain is the one that begins. It's the deposit. It facilitates, like the carburetor in the car. It facilitated distribution.
So if I understand you correctly,
yeah,
you relate the mind to the brain.
Yeah.
You don't go beyond that. Like, are you saying, like many scientists nowadays say, that the mind is an epiphenomenon, a function of the brain? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's wrong. No.
Okay. What do you say?
I'm saying that the brain is actually a collection of nerve systems interconnected and facilitating the I to function.
Okay.
Intaking, distributing, reporting, and etc. And that's the function of that particular brain. Because it's so complex, it has many, of course, nerves around here. Same thing with any other senses. So these are just, what should I say, centers that facilitate the movement of the neuropeptides, along the neurons. So this is why, for example, when the brain is damaged, for example, that doesn't mean that you can live. You have an example of the Frenchman who is living a full life, but whose brain is functions very, very minimally. But that is because even though specific parts of the brain have specific functions, that does not mean that they are not associated with others. So therefore, others take over and facilitate the activity. So that's the way it's like, any other. It's like any other system. If you think of a system, a system has particular parts. But if some part breaks down, that doesn't mean that everything wholly breaks down. Other parts take over and then manage it. How well it's managed or not is a different story. So there's no question that the mind can, in fact, for example, when you're in a coma, for example, your senses are gone, basically.
Yes.
But still, you're not dead. Why?
Yes.
Because the mind is there.
Mhm.
And so I think that's so therefore mind is the forerunner. Brain is something that tries to provide housing for its activities, for it to move around.
Okay, so what about consciousness? What is your view of consciousness?
Consciousness is exactly the same thing as mind. They are just two terms, English terms.
Okay.
No different.
Okay, I can live as that. Now, in your paper, the triune mind finds home in the triune brain, which I think it's a great title.
Mhm.
You talk about stream of consciousness in relation to neurons. What can you tell me about that?
Okay. In fact, the word stream of consciousness is a term used by Jean-Paul Sartre in literature.
Uh-huh.
However, that actually is, the word in Pali is Vijnana Sota. Sota means stream, literally.
Yes.
Vijnana is consciousness.
Yes.
So the stream of consciousness simply there refers to the Vijnana, the one dimension of mind. It may well, however, it does include Mano and Chitta as well.
Okay, so in your life, like you started studying English, it seems to me, right? And
No, actually, no. I've spoken English since my age 5. Now, yeah, because I went to a Catholic school and in the English medium with my sisters as well.
Okay.
Because at the time I grew up, only Catholic schools had English medium.
Okay.
And my father was a principal of a school, and he was getting half the salary of a principal in an English medium school. So he knew the experience of the benefits of having English. Therefore, with whatever little meager resources he had put us, all three of us, me and my 2 sisters, into the English medium. So therefore, I spoke in English probably between around 5, 6, about that age. Now, however, in terms of language, English is not a language, is not something that I studied formally, except when I came to linguistics. In Pennsylvania, I studied English, but then when on my Fulbright, I was at Pennsylvania. And then following that, I went to University of Michigan for a summer school. And then I also did a certificate in teaching English as second language. That's when I began to be a specialist on English.
So when did you start getting involved in psychology?
Oh, also Michigan, I actually took a course in Michigan as well, because I already had the background in linguistics. For that, I had a free hand to take whatever course I wanted, as I got my qualification to teach English. So I chose psychology for that reason. And also, of course, may have been, I can now, if I go take my mind back, maybe because Buddha Dhamma is an entire psychology, because it helps us understand. So therefore, that must have an attraction to study psychology.
So when you were studying psychology, did you also study neurology and brain development and all that?
Oh, not at all. This is just very basics of psychology. Neurology may not have been at that time around. We're talking about 1960s.
So what triggered your interest in neurology and the triune brain?
Oh, that is because I had, because the issue of the mind, even in Pali, Buddhist scholarship, is not clear. And therefore, I thought I'll try to make it clear by writing an article. And then, because there were 3 dimensions of it, both meaning the same, but meaning with different functions, then I call it the triune mind, just using my English skills. As you know, I'm very creative in my English language usage. I'm not afraid of using language. After all, that's how language grows, you know. Some fool like me, introduce some term, it catches on, it dies out. So I use the word triune in that sense. And then when I see, I'm a reader. I've never been seen without a book in my hand. and I read anything I can get into my hand. So I must have encountered triune brain in my readings. Mind you, my third master's at U of T, my second master's U of T, but third master's was on Buddhism as a study of science.
Oh,
That is the field that I was in my third master's.
interesting. So were there many students in that class? I never heard of that course.
It was actually at that time, but what happened was this, there was a little revolution taking place at U of T. At that earlier, the department was called the Department of Religious Studies.
Mm-hmm.
And some professors protested. What does religion do in the university? And then the professor who came to be in charge of it then changed it to the Department for the Study of Religion, make it objective.
Okay.
And then among them was a professor who was interested, who was interested to study from the scientific point of view. He had an understanding of Buddha Dhamma, but studied from the scientific point of view. That was my formal introduction to Buddha Dhamma and science.
I see. So what was the first paper that you ever published on this subject, on the triune brain and triune mind? What was the first?
Actually, the first paper was written in 1995, which was published in the Philosophy East and West, called Whole Body and Not the Heart at the Seat of Consciousness.
I see, very interesting.
And the reason for the title is this. In the 6th century, a scholar called Buddhaghosa in India had posited that the center of the consciousness was the heart.
Was what?
The center of consciousness was the heart.
Oh, the heart, yes.
The Buddha has never said that. Now, what happened was he had actually taken it from the Vedas. I showed how he had taken from the Vedas. He was a Brahmin himself earlier. So I imposed that idea into Buddha Dhamma. And I thought that was misleading and I want to refute that. And the article therefore showed how wrong he was. It was certainly not the Buddha's words, first of all, because it's very clear in the Buddha's words, Vijnana Pachaya Nama Rupa. Pachaya means conditioning. Vijnana Pachaya Nama Rupa. Nama Rupa means mind body. Nama Rupa Pachaya Vijnana. In other words, Nama Rupa means the whole mind body, not the heart.
Yeah, but you use the term quite a lot, mind body.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that it's really more like mind brain, because you haven't said anything about the body so far.
Oh, because the body is a system. Because we did talk about that only because we were talking about the brain. However, for example, when you say body, it means the toe, the leg, the hand, the neck, everything, the whole body. When you talk about the eye, likewise, and then the homeostasis. So they are all a system. And therefore, the Buddha term is mind body, is one word. In fact, when in a recent article I wrote for Parapsychology Association about ESP as reality turned myth, I used the term mind body, and then the editor put a slash between that and a dash. I just took it out, and then it was approved, because still Western science is struggling with this terminology. So therefore, the Buddha's term very clearly is not nama dash rupa, but nama rupa. Nama means name, literally. Rupa means form, name, form, and mind. Okay, mind, body.
So speaking of names, I noticed in your paper that you don't think that the term what is it?
Vijnana.
Reversing, like what's the word? When one
mind body.
Oh, when you die and you are reborn.
Right. Or okay, yeah, Patisandhi.
Yeah. You substituted a different word for that.
Yeah, that is chitta.
Which is what? Translate.
Remember, there were three words of mano,
right,
chitta, and vijnana.
Right.
When you die,
yes,
Buddha says, apeta vijnana. Vijnana is gone, and mano is gone too.
Oh, yes.
Only chitta remains.
So you say rebecoming instead of rebirth.
Yes, because when you are, if from a human, when you die as a human being, you could be born not necessarily as a human being. In fact, it's rare that human birth is rare. And then you could be born as an animal, or you could be born in the sky as what you call a deva. Deva means a shining one. Now there is a parentless birth. So there's no birth there in the sense of that we use term here. So there's no rebirth, but there is a rebecoming right away.
So what is the difference between rebirth and rebecoming?
Oh, because the term rebirth requires a mother.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Well, in the sky, as soon as you die, you get a becoming, ascension life, but there are no parents.
Okay.
That's what it's called becoming.
So
Becoming, yeah. And in fact, that's not even I'm not just using that term. Buddha's term is Puna Bhava. Bhava means becoming.
okay. So
Puna means again.
So you could become an animal, did you say?
Yes, you could become an animal, yeah.
You become a mushroom?
No.
No.
You could become an animal, or what you call a sky being, or there are some other forms that are more suffering abodes.
Oh.
Yes.
That does your rebecoming depend on the kind of life you have lived?
No. Even the being born in the sky, you mean? Rebecoming in the sky, you mean? Yeah. In fact, your life, this life, as well as the past life or future lives, depend entirely on on your karma. Karma means to karma, Kamma. Okay. In Sanskrit is karma, Karma. That has two meanings in Buddha Dhamma. One is karma actually means literary action, what you do in mind, body, and word. But there's also the fruits of that. The fruit. So therefore, when you do something, then as you know, it goes to 17 mind moments, it's recorded in the mind, and then it's stored, and then that is what is carried to the next life in Chitta, which is why I call it the Chitta DNA. It carries information, of course, changing all the time. That's the one that determines the next life. So if you have led a good life of moral life, meaning self-discipline, and then you will be likely born in the sky. But if you have been a bad life, then the chances are you will not be born in the sky, but you will be born as an animal or even lower.
So if you are born into the sky, what do? What happens to you in the sky?
Oh, that's difficult because there's very little literature on that. All you know is, however, this. It's called the spontaneous birth. Spontaneous.
Okay.
You got to life right away. And in full flesh. In fact, there are cases in the text, in what you call the Tipitaka, the Tricompendium, that's the collection of the Buddha's teachings. There was a person, a Buddha lived in a place called Jetavana for 25 years. And that was in a land donated by a millionaire called Anatha Pindika. And then he passed away. The next morning, a young man appeared to the Buddha. And he talked about, he sang about, he said a poem about the place. Oh, I know this place. I like it very much. And he also talked about the Buddha's chief disciple called Sariputta. Now, there was the Buddha's attendant, a person attendant did not know who it was. Then the Buddha said, that was Anatha Pindika, who came back as a young man. And the appearance, because they, what I call not celestial, celestian beings, like pedestrian, I call it celestian. Celestian beings are invisible, but they can make themselves appear just like that, and then disappear equally. So, for example, there was a Dietas who came down to, and then as the Buddha, the word is Deva, D-E-V-A, from the div to shine. And then ask the question, both humans and devas are interested in the blessings, what are good things to be done. And then it was as in poetry. And the whole of the sutta is in poetry. So they speak, and of course there are also cases where they're talking up in the sky among themselves. Some of them are disciples of other teachers in India at that time. So they're not just Buddhists, nothing to do with religion. Everybody who has earned a place, as I call them, like, the snowbirds in Canada, snow time they fly to Florida and come back, but sky is heaven, However, it's not an end, it's only a halfway house like earth is, temporary life.
Okay, and then what happens?
Then they can live there, and also life, the length of time, lifetime could be a few years, could be thousands of years as well. And it also depends, and there are different levels of as well. In fact, I read an article comparing, talking about in Western science, the stratosphere to exosphere. And the Buddha, and in Buddhism, there are four levels of spiritual life in the sky as well. So then after that, then you look to be born again. Now, again, the fact that you are in the sky does not necessarily guarantee you come back as a human being. You could be even as an animal from there. However, if you do happen to come as a human being, then what is done is actually at the point of death, not even before in the sky, when vijnana dies away with the other, an individual like you or me is called a pentagrate. That means the 5 aggregates, pentaggregate. That is the water, heat, wind, and earth, plus vijnana. So at the point of dying means all of those are gone. But what remains is chitta. And the chitta then continues. And as I say, chitta is now, mind you, with no help. And then you look for the material support, and that's where I bring in the word. The term Higgs field.
Yes.
Higgs field. Yes. I'm saying that the connection with a dimension of the Higgs field, and Sheldrake talks about the morphic resonance.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not in Buddhism. This is in Western science. So I then link it, because mind is now is only a mind. There's no body, but the mind can't exist without a body. So you have to latch on to something. And then I'm saying Higgs field. At that point, then you become an Opa particle. So likewise, the chitta comes back. And okay, so at the point of death, then is the vijnana is gone, and because the mano is gone, chitta at the last minute, all of your life history shows up on your mind. That's those with NDE, the near-death experience, talks about that. And now from the Buddhist Buddhian point of view, at that point, you determine where you will be born.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Perhaps we should stop on that.
Yeah.
Becoming a little bit too specific.
Yeah.
In terms of, I read in your biography that you are a Theravada monk. So is Theravada Buddhism different from, let's say, the Buddhism, the Tibetan Buddhism of the Dalai Lama?
Well, yes and no. Because I myself don't use the term Theravada. That's a traditional term. Thera means elder.
Aha.
Okay, Vada means the understanding of speaking the Dhamma.
Right.
That means that this is the oldest tradition that incorporate, that is in the language of Pali, which was used in some way by the Buddha in India. And that was introduced, it was recited within 3 months after Buddha Parinibbana, and that was introduced to Sri Lanka, and there were what you call councils, and introduced to Sri Lanka in the 3rd century BC, and in the 1st century committed to writing for the first time in the history. And that is called the Theravada. And then, of course, there was no name at the time there. At that time, it was just the Buddha's words, that's what was known. But then later, in India itself, then, of course, things began to change after Buddha passing away. And therefore, as you know, in India, the majority religion is Vedism, with the belief in God and all the mythologies. So they began to come together because there was no Buddhist voice as much. So by about the few centuries later, Buddhism basically died. However, in the meantime, there came to a mixture of Buddhist thought and the Vedic thought.
And what?
Veda means Hinduism, Vedic thought. And then as a result of that emerged Mahayana. And then the Mahayana is a very sort of arrogant kind of term, because the Mahayana is the great vehicle, and then say, oh, you are the Hinayana, the lower vehicle, just to say, we know better than you. That's the idea. And then it was in the 6th century that Tibetan Buddhism arose. Because what happened was, Buddhism was taken to Tibet in about the 6th century, about 1,000 years after the Buddha.
1,000 years later.
Yes, 1,000 years later. Yes.
Yes.
And then, so therefore, and also when it went to when it came to when it went to Tibet, it also got interacted with what you call the Bon religion, the local one. When you get to Mahayana in China, then there are Taoism and Confucianism. But whereas in Sri Lanka, at the time Buddha Dhamma was introduced, there was no major religious belief at all. So there was less contamination from any outside source. That's why in Sri Lanka, it can be said to be held, in its pristine purity to whatever extent. So therefore, so they are different in those terms. However, all Buddhists accept the basic foundation teachings of the Buddha.
Okay, so that's good. That's good. Thank you. What is your next project? Is there anything that you're working on right now?
Well, as you know, my expectation is that the world has lost a lot by not paying enough attention to Buddha Dhamma, Buddha science.
Sure.
And my attempt is now to keep on showing that Buddha Dhamma is Buddhian science. I use the Buddhian science because it's arrived at empirically, not mythologically or philosophically or logically. And few know about that in the West. And so my project, I have no particular project, where I'm now a retired monk, but conceptually, that's what I would like to be working on, to establish Buddhian science in the West, not to promote Buddha Dhamma, it doesn't need promoting, but to expose the Western world to the reality. For example, we talked about the mind, I believe the forerunner. Today, it is accepted in the Western world by physicists, neuroscientists, etc. as well. So it took 2,500 years. So my project is see whether the Western scientists can be introduced to the Buddhism science.
Okay, so in a more personal way, was there one person in your life that stands out who influenced you the most of all the people that you have ever met? Is there one person who stands out?
Two people actually, my mother and father.
Okay, tell me a little bit about them.
Yeah, because this is not just because of I happen to be the child, but basically because they were the ones who installed value system in me. For example, my father was a teetotaler and a non-smoker.
Okay.
And then he was also dynamic social worker. And therefore, and in fact, he had written about 25-page biography. And my mother was also a very kind person because there were sisters. She was the one who was the kindest in the family. Anybody could walk into a house. So my father has in the short biography that our home was school for us, meaning to grow up as good human beings. So they are the ones that I would cherish as my dearest the people who influence my life. And then also, you know that I've been now called a multidisciplinarian. And my father was also, in fact, he ends his words by saying, he is one who put to the lie the saying, one excels in one thing in the world. He said that if people think that, you're a scientist,
yes,
artist, only one thing. Only one thing, okay? So one excels in one thing. But my father says, I have excelled in many, many things. Therefore, I put to the lie. And I was never conscious, but I have now come to be one like him, because my different interests, for example.
How old was your father when he passed away?
He was 83.
So he still lived to see you succeed in the Western world.
He what? Sorry?
He lived to see you succeed in the West.
Oh, absolutely, yes. In fact, I invited him over to Canada as well in 1981.
So was your father proud of what you accomplished?
Yes, he has been not only proud of me, but he's the one who guided me.
Oh, in what way?
In my education and my life, I'll give a good example. For example, I was born in Tangal, and then after going to English school, then all three of us were sent to Colombo, the capital city, into Buddhist schools. Earlier it was a Catholic school. Two sisters were in a Buddhist girls' school, and I was in a Buddhist boys' school.
Right.
And then I was there up to grade 10, and then for my grade 11 and 12 for university entrance, my father then got me admitted to the leading Buddhist school, Buddhist boys' school in the country, called Ananda College. And then, so that's one thing, how he guided us in our education. He knew the real world, okay? And then, however, interesting happened. When I was,
Sure. When you were?
I sat for the university entrance exam and I failed. And then my interest was to continue because all my other friends went to the university. But my father said, no, it's better not to go, just to get a job. And then that proved to be a wonderful opportunity for me than going to university.
So why do you think you failed?
Oh, I think primarily because I've never thought of studies as being holy moly and the only thing in life. At college, for example, I was a cadet. I was a cricketer. I was the secretary of the Buddhist Literary Association. I was a member of the Buddhist Brotherhood.
Would you say you were an extrovert?
Sorry?
Would you consider yourself an extrovert as opposed to an introvert?
I won't know because I never think of myself. I never think of myself. But however, If by extrovert means being interested in what's happening in the outside world, yes, I am.
Social. You're obviously very social.
However, I'm also an introvert, but I always look inside myself and see, am I doing the right thing?
No, that's being introspective. That's not the same as introvert.
What's an introvert? I don't know what introvert is then.
Who sort of keeps to themselves and is kind of afraid of people and sort of reluctant to engage with people.
Oh, no, I was not that, yes. So I was not, yeah.
Who really enjoys meeting people. And I think,
Absolutely, no question, yeah.
yeah, you follow.
And I think that may be part of this. The Buddha, as per the Buddhism science, Buddha's words, you must always look after your well-being first.
Sure.
However, never forget the well-being of the other.
Yeah.
So therefore, for you want to look after yourself, then in the process, always be with the others to see how they can be helped or how I can enjoy their company.
Mm-hmm. So if you were to do anything different in your life, what would it be?
Nothing. I'm doing exactly what I'm doing now. Is at the moment what I'm doing is when I got ordained, it was to search for liberation in this very life.
So liberation meaning getting off the rebirthing cycle.
That's right, the cycle of life. Yes, I want to get off that, and that was the purpose why I got ordained. So therefore, nothing would want me to change, take away from me from the path, from the course.
Okay. So that kind of makes me think of another question, like what does it mean to you to being a human being?
Oh, the wonderful opportunity to gain liberation. You cannot get liberation. You can only get liberation as a human being, except there's an exception. You cannot come to only as a human being in this very life.
Yes.
One can become liberated. One can become liberated. However, if you cannot, then you can enter the path. There are 4 stages.
Yes.
A path of liberation, 4 stages. One is called the stream winner. You know, the stream, when we talk about the stream of consciousness.
Yes.
Because stream winner, you enter the path.
Okay.
Once you enter the path, then you can be born, you'll be born a maximum of 7 lifetimes, but never in the suffering abode, always in the sky or earth. And then after that, you can be born, you can advance yourself to what is called the once returner. That means that you die, go to the sky and come back only once. And the liberation sort of comes to be in the next lifetime. Or you can be born, you can be die as a non-returner. From that means you go to the sky, you don't come back.
Okay, so that's stage 3.
And then you, but still you're not liberated. You're in the sky. However, you have enough background within you, cultivate level, that in the sky, after your last attachments are got rid of, you become at a nibbana in the sky itself. Okay.
So who keeps track of these points that you acquire in your life? Like who decides? How is that decided?
That's no question of deciding. Liberation in the Buddhism science means getting rid of all attachment, nary an attachment.
Right. Okay. But
only you know what attachment you have.
But then how do you get into this next stage? You know, like you described 4 different stages, right?
Yes, that is up to the individual.
Next, like
that's up to the individual.
How does that happen?
Oh, because it's actually enumerated. There are certain impediments that are in the way, stopping, and you have to overcome. For example, to become a Sotapanna stream winner, the first step, the first thing one has to get rid of the sense of I-ness. I am me. Buddha explains, as he said earlier, I am only the five aggregates.
Mhm.
Change your reality. So there's no reason for me to be attached to myself.
Mhm.
And when you get rid of that, that is the first step in the path, in the process along the path. And then, and that is called the Sakkaya Ditti, the view of yourself. And then also at that time in India, there are lots of things done, rituals done in the name of God, that all kinds of things which are not, it did not mean self-discipline. But the Buddha says to get rid of that notion, once you get rid of that notion, and you follow the self-discipline, basically abstaining from taking life, abstaining from not taking what is not given, that's stealing, abstaining from sexual misconduct,
Mhm.
abstaining from wrongful use of language,
Mhm.
abstaining from going overboard on liquor and drugs. These are the 5 basic training principles for a layperson. And then, if you then also cultivate other, so therefore, that is the self-discipline. But if you go to if you offer 500 animals for God, that's a ritual. But they believe that is the way, the spiritual life. So if you get it, then the second step would be to get rid of that. And then, of course, and then all the next one would be to have, if you have any doubts about the Buddha, to question what is it that you understand, and cultivate a confidence in the Buddha. When you say confidence, it is not blind faith. It is considered, you look at something, and Buddha says, never accept anything because it's in hearsay, tradition, text, or even because I say it. Put to the test, and if you are convinced, then you do it, accept it. And then you decide. He says, I am only the teacher. I can't save you. Only you can liberate yourself. So therefore, the 5 training principles, what I call training principles, is what guides a Buddhist life. And then, however, you continue to have other attachments, however, in the senses. To begin to gradually minimize those attachments in your life. That's how you advance on the path.
All right. Well, thank you for that explanation. So my last question before we conclude is,
Yeah.
what would you like to be remembered for?
Oh, I'm not sure. I don't even know that I want to be remembered. But my point is this. When I do something good or bad, then I already have acquired the fruit. Not now, but eventually. So as long as I do things in the way I think is honest and right and for the good well-being of others as well as mine, then I have acquired the merit. So whether it is recognized by others or not makes no difference to my liberation. So therefore, it doesn't matter to me whether I am remembered or not.
So essentially, you are living to be liberated.
Well, and I can't say I'm living to be liberated, because to want to be living is what we call the thirst to be.
Mm-hmm.
I have no thirst to be.
Mm-hmm.
Nor do I have a thirst to be not, not to die. So in other words, I have neither the thirst to live nor the thirst to die. And if next moment I fall dead, fine, no issue.
So do you have a thirst to be a good person?
But that, no, if you do it as a thirst, yes, then it's a thirst. But you can be a good person without being attached to it. If, in fact, if you were to thirst to want to attain Nibbana, that itself is an attachment. That will not let you become, again, liberation.
I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you so much. My guest today was the Venerable Bhikkhu Mihita, professor, former professor at University of Toronto, a Buddhist monk. We talked about the triune mind and the triune brain. Fascinating conversation. Thank you so much, Professor Mihita. And it was good to meet you and good to learn about the Buddhist way of looking at Western science. I want to say that my next guest next week is going to be Professor Gerlinda Metz, who from the Department of Neuroscience at the University of Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. Once again, thank you, Professor Mihita.
Thank you very much.
Time. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you very much for inviting me and the opportunity to talk about these matters that you raised.
Good. I enjoyed meeting you. I hope you enjoyed our conversation.
Oh, indeed, yes. And enjoy your life and be well and look out yourself.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.